Well, Ron DeSantis' shipment of only a mere 50 migrants to, and really this can't be understated, one of the wealthiest places in this country, Martha's Vineyard, has become the signature moment of these governor's master plan. And joining us now to react to this is the former acting director of ICE and former chief of Border Patrol, Ron Vitiello. Ron, thanks so much for joining us. Good to have your expert opinion on this. I think shipping the illegals out of Martha's Vineyard within 48 hours tells us all we need to know about where these blue state Democrats stand on this issue. This sheriff now in Texas, Javier Salazar, has opened an investigation into DeSantis' assisting illegals in their travels to the beautiful Martha's Vineyard. Watch this.
We are opening up a case with an investigation with regard to the suspected activities involving the 48 migrants from Venezuela. As we understand it, 48 migrants were lured, I will use the word lured, under false pretenses. They were taken to Martha's Vineyard from what we can gather for little more than a photo op, video op, and then they were unceremoniously stranded in Martha's Vineyard.
So, Ron, here you have a law enforcement officer who couldn't say what crimes had been committed, but is holding a press conference stating that he's begun an investigation not into the 2 million illegals crossing the border, not into the 53 illegal migrants that died in an abandoned 18-wheeler truck in his county back in June, or the drug cartels that we know are now operating the border, but the governor of Florida who sent a bunch of people to an island run by some of the wealthiest people in this country. Do I have this right?
Yeah, a world-class trip in an aircraft provided with, and these people from Venezuela got on that airplane after having signed a waiver to go there. And then the inclusivity of Martha's Vineyard, it's such a sanctuary, it's such a great place for people to go that they weren't allowed to stay there for more than 2 days. And that sheriff, those people in San Antonio they need to hold him to account. It's embarrassing that he's going to use this opportunity to talk about what the governor did. And the rest of the federal government has been doing this, as you said, this entire year. The government has been sending people all over the country on airline flights. And I'm sure that sheriff didn't investigate the federal government for doing that. And as you pointed out, what about the poor people who died in San Antonio in the back of that tractor trailer? So his priorities are totally skewed on this thing. And, as the sheriff of Bexar County, he ought to be more accountable to his citizens because they're being inundated by migrants as well. And so what the governor DeSantis did as it relates to Martha's Vineyard, he put this story front and center because most of the mainstream media has ignored it. They made a big deal about the president being on 60 Minutes. Not one question about border security, not one question about fentanyl, not one question about the deaths that are occurring on our southwest border and how the cartels are enriching themselves as our economy falters.
Yeah, gone are the days of Mike Wallace, 60 Minutes, right? Well, unlike Martha's Vineyard, Ron, New York plans to let the illegals stay. The Big Apple is building expensive tent towns to cope with their brand new neighbors, and the mayor, Eric Adams, of this city, ordered all agencies to cut city-funded expenditures by 3% for the year to help deal with it. Not to mention that he's also considering housing these illegals on cruise ships in New York Harbor. That being said, though, how much worse do you see it getting for these cities like New York, Washington, and now Martha's Vineyard, the Boston area? What's going to become of all of this? Where does this end?
Well, we have a bipartisan agreement here, right? You have the governor of Texas and the mayor of New York agreeing that uncontrolled illegal migration across the southwest border and all the people that are being released into the United States is a burden on our society. It's a burden on resources as it relates to schools, as it relates to crime, as it relates to public health resources. So there's bipartisan agreement that this is a big problem. I think the mayor, in his reaction, has not talked about what's going on at the border. They want to talk about the science. They want to talk about the analysis. They want to talk about root causes. Why is he not calling up the White House and asking them what the heck they're doing on the border? The president came out of in the White House this week and said, oh, it's a problem because they're coming from Cuba and Venezuela. We've never had that problem before. Okay, maybe that's true, but what is he doing about it? Where are the plans? Why is he not doing a diplomatic effort in Venezuela to get a migrant protection protocol? Why are we not pressuring Mexico to go back to a policy that helped us control the border. When this president took over, they had 40-year lows in migration along the southwest border. And now we're seeing the worst surge ever. We're closing in on 2.5 million encounters. That doesn't count the over 700 people who died on those journeys. That doesn't count the 90 people who were on the terrorist screening database watch list who were encountered by CBP, and the thousands and thousands of people who made it across that border without seeing anybody from law enforcement. There's a real threat as well.
Yeah. Ronald Vitiello, thank you so much for your insight tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.